one guy got a pedal, and then the other guy had to get a pedal, and then I have to have another pedal because you have one. I have one more than you now. And,
right, and my pedal's bigger.
And my pedal does all this. Well, check this sound out and make.
Yeah.
My pedal is this. My pedal is. And it's like, like whatever. And through all that, like I felt like I'm like, I'm good, dude. Like this banjo's hard enough as it is,
Hey everybody, Keith Billik here with another episode of the Picky Fingers Banjo Podcast. The guest for this episode is none other than Arlen Bont of the band Greensky Bluegrass. And I had a lot of fun talking to Mike. We had so much fun, actually, that we went a bit over time, and therefore I am breaking this episode up into two different parts. So what you will hear today is part one, the first half of my conversation with Mike, and the second part of the conversation will be coming up shortly in the next few days or week. For those of you out there who are not familiar with the music of Greensky Bluegrass, there's no other way to put it. They are boldly going where no bluegrass band has gone before. They've managed to become one of the more prominent bands in the jam band scene, which means their concerts feature a lot of free-form improvisation, vocal and instrument effects, a big light show, and of course a bunch of cheering, dancing fans. Through all of that, at least to my ears, they do remain at their core a bluegrass band that remain true to the spirit of the music. And even if some of you disagree and think that maybe they're taking the music to places where it shouldn't go, there's no denying that they're exposing thousands and thousands of fans at all these places that they're playing that are normally reserved for headlining rock and pop acts, that they're exposing those crowds to the sounds of banjos and the sounds of dobros and guitars and acoustic music and bluegrass repertoire. But enough of me talking. Here's the interview with Mike Bont of Greensky Bluegrass. As always, you can email the show at pickyfingersbanjopodcast@gmail.com, and also look for me on all the social media sites for any comments or questions that you might have for me. So here it is, Mike Bont of Greensky Bluegrass.
So here we are in my practice room.
Thank you for having me.
/ guest bedroom.
All these instruments have too many strings on them. That's the first thing I notice about the place.
I know. There's a lot of instruments on the wall, and you may notice not a single one of them is a banjo.
But that's okay. You have a good excuse. All of your banjos are being put to better use elsewhere.
Yes.
In studios and...
Yeah, we are. Yes, they're out down in the studio right now.
Nice.
Hanging out down there.
Are you guys recording a new album, or what are you doing in there?
Yes, we are in the process of working on some new stuff.
Do you choose a different studio every time? Is that sort of a thing you do purposely? It seems like, because I know you were up here a couple albums ago.
Yeah.
For Handguns.
Yeah.
And I don't know where this last one was recorded.
At the same, down in Echo Mountain, down in Asheville, North Carolina.
Okay, so you're digging that place.
Yeah, it's the studio itself. It's the sweet studio. It's a converted old church. So there's like big stained glass windows and really high ceilings, a lot of natural wood. It has a really great sound.
Is it one room? Do you play live?
No, there's the main what I would refer to as the main chapel area is the main tracking room. And then at the back of the chapel, there's a couple different rooms. There's a couple different rooms where one is the main mixing room.
Yeah, control
room.
And
then there's a control room. And then there's another side room off to the right of the control room where I get stuck because I have to be isolated because I play a banjo.
Yeah, you'll bleed everywhere.
Oh, exactly. You blow the whole take,
I have officially entered the Bont zone. Have you seen these new stickers?
Yes, the Bont zone stickers. Yes, I'm familiar with.
Are those official?
I mean,
like licensed merch, or am I in possession of contraband?
No, I mean it's like total like heady like lap merch.
Yeah.
Is what it is.
That's how it happened with me. Some hippie kid just walked past me. I was playing at the Fretboard Festival here in Kalamazoo a few weeks ago, and a guy just hands it to me. And I thought it was great. Finally, banjo players get our own sticker. So, hey, let's talk about how you got into all this. So we're sitting here in Kalamazoo. This is where you grew up, more or less, right? Are you from here?
I went to college here.
Okay.
And I came here in the mid-'90s to go to college at Western Michigan University, mainly because it was a party school and all my friends were going there too. And then spent more time playing acoustic guitar on my couch at home than going to class.
You weren't playing banjo yet?
I wasn't playing banjo at the time, no. I really got into jazz music when I was in college and wanted to be a jazz guitarist.
Who were the jazz guys that you liked?
I love Grant Green.
Yeah.
He's the man. He's kind of like my main man.
Okay.
As far as it's like my zone all the way.
Yeah.
You know.
He's a smooth dude.
Yeah, but otherwise, you know, like Kenny Burrell, like the guys like the really smooth, just awesome bebop guys. You know those guys. But anyways, I was practicing to become a world famous jazz guitarist when I had this realization that jazz guitar is really hard. And
and world famous jazz guitarist is almost as much of an oxymoron as world famous banjo player.
Right, exactly.
So you needed more of a challenge, is really what you're
telling me. No, I think I just wanted something different. And I was always drawn to the sound of a banjo. There's a local bluegrass band here in Kalamazoo called Great Lakes Grass. And Rock Bartley, the banjo picker for that band, who, ironically enough, years later builds my banjos now.
Well, we will definitely get into talking about
that. But I saw him pick one night, and I was like, "That's cool, man. That's a cool sound. I want to learn how to, I want to learn to do that." And then, went the next. It was my birthday. It was like my 22nd birthday or something like that. And the next day, went and bought a banjo.
Where'd you go for that?
Music Galaxy. Actually, here in Kalamazoo. No longer a store here in Kalamazoo.
Okay.
Actually, I still own a bunch of stuff from Music Galaxy. Actually, I have an amp in my closet. This old Spectra, Dean Markley Spectra.
It's a collector's item, man.
It is a collector's item. It's from like the early 80s, I think, early 90s.
Put it on eBay.
Yeah,
buy some more banjos.
No way, man. It's actually worth some money. It's like a solid state, like 280 watt 212s.
That's a beast.
It's a beast.
So anyways, how did you learn? How did you transition from being this jazz guy to diving into bluegrass? I
went to Flipside Records here in Kalamazoo. There's this record store here called Flipside Records, and they had a bluegrass section. And I would go into the bluegrass section and randomly pick out bluegrass albums, like pick out Earl Scruggs and Bill Monroe and Hot Rise and the Seldom Scene, and I would just randomly look at the instrumentation on the back, and if it had like flute or drums or
it was out,
harmonica, it was out. You know what I mean? So
it sounds like you approached it actually very similar to me. I started playing banjo and then decided, hey, if I'm playing this, I better figure out what I'm supposed to do with it. And then I checked out the music, where I feel like a lot of people have it the opposite, where they are bluegrass fans and they like banjo, so they start playing it. It's kind of the opposite with us.
Yeah.
It sounds like.
Yeah. Well, and you buy the Earl Scruggs book, and it's like this like impossible puzzle of music that you can, if you're trying to learn a banjo, it's impossible to figure out. Like after you understand a banjo, that book makes sense. But boy, if you pick that up and thinking like that's what you're going to learn from it, it is from a different era. If you know what I mean. It has it's really like it's not.
It's marketed as an instructional book.
I actually have the original. I have the original album in my record.
Record?
The record of the. I think that actually helps. If you but like they don't make the recording of it. But if you have, I have the original album from it in my collection.
Yeah, I never tried to learn banjo from that book because it
doesn't make any sense.
It's not the best as an instructional guide, but the real value to it is the song.
The songs transcribed, right? Once you know how to play the banjo, then the book gets really cool because then all of a sudden you're playing Foggy Mountain Breakdown and stuff.
Note for note stuff, transcribed by Bill Keith, I believe. Who needs the record, man?
Who needs the
I'll
record,
just have
man?
you follow me around and play all the tunes.
That's all I just need to know, yeah.
So this actually brings me to one of our internet questions. I solicited internet questions for you.
Oh, good.
Some are pretty interesting. Maybe we'll get to those.
Like what kind of candies do I like, and what size pants do I wear?
Way freakier than that, man.
Yeah, okay.
From Reddit, TX Grung asks, what was the first song you learned on the banjo?
Blue Ridge Cabin Home, a well-beaten path on the old... Is that Blue Ridge Cabin Home, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I remember that was the first song I've been practicing a whole lot, and I was sitting out on my front porch one morning, and I don't have a capo because it's an A, obviously. Actually, that's the one that's Radius. Actually, that might work.
Is
right?
it?
Yeah, that's a guitar capo.
Go for it, man.
Yeah. I just remember like I would that.
Trying to work on those
that was like remember that like playing that role like it was the one person that made sense.
Right. Yeah, you hear the music come together when you... Did you have anyone teaching you, or are you self-taught?
I'm self-taught.
Okay. And then so at some point, you ran into Dave and Paul not too long after that, right?
Dave and I have been friends for...
Oh, you already knew him?
I knew Dave, yes.
Okay.
When I was just learning, and I think before I actually learned Blue Ridge Cabin Home, I was at this jam. My roommate took me to this jam session, and I remember this really oddly warm February day. It was like 70 degrees in February.
Yeah, one of those days.
Yeah, and it was 1999. Took me to my friend's apartment, and Dave was there playing guitar, and we played. I don't remember what we played. We played a couple, I think like Little Circle Be Unbroken or something like that, and we kind of met. And he was actually going out. He was going to school out on the East Coast at the time, and so he wasn't around basically, and he would come around every so often, and we'd get together and we'd jam.
Okay.
There's this place called the Cooper Cafe, which I don't know if you know about the Cooper Cafe.
I don't.
Out here in Cooper. They're world famous. I think it still happens every Wednesday and Saturday. Lonesome Moonlight Trio.
Okay.
String band goes there. It's called Bluegrass Breakfast.
I have heard of Bluegrass Breakfast. Okay,
yes, this is the legend of Bluegrass Breakfast.
Yes, excellent.
Is those three guys, Pete, Pat, and Jimmy.
Okay.
Pat, the banjo player, used to work at Gibson, and he was one of the few people that would let Bill Monroe's mandolin would come in to get serviced, and he was one of the couple people that Bill would request to have work on his mandolin.
He was allowed to touch it.
He was allowed to touch it, and has pictures of him with working on Bill Monroe's mandolin. That's for all cool. Those people out there looking for. There's a Kalamazoo connection right there. If you don't know.
Kalamazoo, not only is it a real place, but it's a very important place, especially for bluegrass history.
Bluegrass history, exactly. Yeah. And then there's guitar, and Pete played the guitar, and Jimmy played the mandolin, and they do always cool old timey songs. And you go there and eat pancakes and have coffee and listen to this cool music, and we do it every Wednesday or Saturday if we could, and then we'd go jam after going to have Bluegrass Breakfast.
After you're kind of inspired,
right?
Belly full of pancakes.
Exactly, belly full of pancakes.
Very nice.
Oh, and then so Dave and I had been doing a couple. We got together and started to learn some tunes together. When he officially was done with school out on the East Coast and moved back to Kalamazoo, we started a band. Or we started picking together, and we learned a couple tunes, and we started doing a couple open mics. And a friend of ours who was playing the mandolin at the time, kind of with us, not great, but he was playing with us.
Yeah.
Had the idea why don't you be cool if you had a bluegrass band? It was called Greensky Bluegrass.
And now he's making just boatloads of royalties.
And now he's just making boatloads of royalties.
Yeah. Checks in the mail, dude.
Checks in the mail, dude.
I swear.
Yeah, right.
So the stuff you were playing back then it was again Will the Circle Be Unbroken? Just these real kind of typical traditional ones that you encounter.
Yeah, it was it was like hot corn, cold corn.
Yeah,
and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
man, hot corn, cold corn.
So then Sky Bluegrass was born, and in case we lost anyone, the Dave that we've been talking about is Dave Bruza, who is still your bandmate to this day. Guitarist with Sky Bluegrass. So that's how it was born. It was a couple of guys going to bluegrass breakfast around Kalamazoo. Now, of course, I met all you guys sort of a little bit after that, when we were both kind of starting to play bars and brew pubs and clubs.
Because you were playing in a band called Hot Toe Midi.
We were
at the time,
and so there's
people may not know this, but Keith and I have known each other for probably almost 20 years.
Right, and it was very cool because as a relatively young person learning how to play bluegrass and exploring this stuff, to meet you guys who were, I feel comfortable saying, we were kind of on the same skill level. We were both learning all together. We were both kind of in the same social crowd.
Yep.
So it worked really well to be able to swap gigs and even swap band members. If somebody couldn't make it, we did.
Yep. There was that one time where I cut my finger.
Yeah, you were cooking.
I was cooking and I cut my finger at work, and I had to call you in to play the gig at, was it Billy's in Easttown? I think it was Billy's in Easttown.
Yeah, it could be. And then I remember that happening.
And then you, of course, you played at my wedding too. You stood in for the banjo at my wedding.
Yes,
too,
I was basically you.
Yes.
a couple different times.
couple different times. Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun. So yeah, the band's starting out back then. You're playing bars. How does it evolve from there? How do we get to where we are now? What were some of
so Dave and I are playing a couple open mics. There's one open mic where this is my favorite story, where this long-haired hippie kid with the Mr. T equivalent of hippie bling on approaches,
like hemp necklaces.
Like hemp necklaces. Okay. Yes. That's what I'm trying. Yep, the hemp necklaces approaches us after Dave and I do an open mic at Papa Pete's one night, and said he's like, "Hi, my name is Paul. I just got a mandolin. I really like David Grisman. Can I come jam with you guys sometime?" We said, yeah, and
there you have
the
it.
rest is history.
Yeah.
Right there you have it. Well, and this will have is that Paul writes really good songs too. Actually, Paul and Dave both write really good songs.
That does help.
It does help. Yes.
I do remember hearing you guys a lot back then. You guys sang really well together too, and that's still something that is kind of a signature part of the sound.
That was actually something that Paul was one of his greatest. One of the best things that he brought initially to the band was he was a singer in high school. He was big into choir and
trained properly,
trained singer, and he was the one that kind of taught us like how to sing together, like harmonies and stuff like that. Where what notes to sing when we were trying to figure out how to sing harmonies together.
Yeah, that's very valuable.
Yeah, and and when you've been singing together as long as we have, it's like to have that blend. It takes. Doesn't always happen overnight. That's for sure.
Yeah, even back then, I thought that was one of your guys' strong traits.
Well, we played really fast too. That was the one thing. Like we sang well together, and we played really fast.
That's what people want to hear.
Man, I could still play really fast, man. Like I still think it's like one of the. There's a lot of moments where we're playing live, and the band's like count it off fast and play it fast, and I'm like okay, and they're not ready for how fast it is. They keep up with the old guy, is what it's called,
Well, that's the advantage we have, though.
Well, fast.
We have three picks.
There's different levels of fast. So there's fast and out of time, and then there's like metronome, like snare drum, like just like that. There's the zone.
Well, that's the crazy thing. If you listen to these old Flatt and Scruggs recordings, Lester sounds so relaxed with his singing, and the band is so in the pocket that it sounds slow. It sounds so relaxed, and then you try to play along with it. You're like, whoa,
it's a lot faster.
I can't even keep up.
It's a lot faster than you think it is. Yeah.
Exactly. It sounds very relaxed for how fast they're actually playing. So that's always kind of been a goal of mine, is to get to that point where it just sounds so easy.
Well, it's pretty easy. It's gotta practice. Maybe it's gotta practice more.
Yeah, it definitely takes some endurance.
Metronome. That is the number one key there.
Did you always practice with a metronome pretty regularly?
I did for a long time.
What kind of things did you do? What was your approach to?
It was basically for the spacing of time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people when they start playing, they actually you play too fast. They rush the notes between the notes.
I agree.
And what you need to do is have that like a relaxed. I talk about playing like a Everything has to be very, very like spaced evenly for it to sound good, and that's how you get the roll going. And what the metronome, if it's going click, 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 click. You feel how like even that feels, and like it's how people's tendency like they want to rush all that, and it's how hard it really is to just be like able to go click, 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 click,
right?
Click. How hard that's really hard to stay in that groove and not like get ahead of it or get behind it,
right? And not to. I'm not thinking of anyone in particular, but people who play with that characteristic, the fast and out of time, it's pretty obvious that they tried too hard to play fast before they could play slow.
It's a lot harder to play fast and in time. That's where the
but it'll make you seasick if something's off.
But it's also one of those things. But that if you can play fast and in time on a banjo, it's like you're just like chugging down and that's one of the, I think one of the coolest feelings is in banjos. Like obviously the banjo wants to be fast, but if you can play fast and in time, like there's nothing.
Especially when you have a good rhythm section.
If you have a really good rhythm section,
you're warmed up,
and
you can just cruise along.
I just said doo-doo. Dang it. Anyways.
That's the magic of editing. We can... Do you want to answer another Reddit question?
Sure.
This one's from Big Woolly Samson.
Big Woolly Samson. He used to have a cat named Samson. It was his favorite cat.
Was the cat big and woolly?
He was a big orange cat.
Well, apparently the cat found a way to sign up on Reddit, and he's now emailing questions.
from the afterlife. I love that.
That's what Reddit is.
Send me your address from heaven. That's what it is, right?
Well, at any rate, your dead cat wants to know, what's the beginner advice you wish someone had given you?
Man, I think I just explained the fact that that's the time. I think the one thing that I would say is when you're learning the rolls and it says thumb 1 2 thumb 1, like actually do that. Don't if it feels easy. I know if it says T and you want to play the 1. There's a reason before it because with the way that a banjo works, sound-wise, you always want to lead the beginning of the measure with the plastic thumb pick because it sounds different than the two metal index and middle finger picks.
It sounds different. And you can accent
when you that dun, that's all that and you can't get that same sound with the metal picks.
Exactly. Yeah,
that's the one thing I was like. That's really important to not only practice the rolls in time, which I would like to point out those rolls were in time as well. But most notes that were standing out were all the notes that were that plastic thumb pick.
Yeah, allows you to have more control over the accents of your playing.
Yeah, and then when you get to the point where you're unlearning the rolls, then your technique is proper. Like that's what happened to me. I learned the banjo a couple different times, I guess, so to speak, because I didn't subscribe. I didn't want to do my thumb there because I thought leave with my thumb there or play my index there or play because I thought it was easier to do this finger, and then once you actually learn how to play the banjo correctly, technique is a real thing in the banjo, especially when you're playing a lot of notes very quickly.
Right. What I tell people is you have to learn those rolls so internally.
Yes.
Because if you had to take time to think about every note that you're playing at 160 beats per minute, it's hopeless. You're not going to do it.
Because as a more advanced banjo player, you're already thinking a couple measures ahead of where you're at because you're going to be there really soon.
Right, it's like learning things by ear. You press play, but before you can even get your hand on the instrument, you're about 16 notes behind. It's really it can be pretty frustrating.
Yeah.
So when you were going through and finding all those CDs at the record store,
Flipside Record Store, yes.
Okay, yeah,
Flipside.
that one. Who'd you find? Like, who really influenced you in those early years? Did you have any people that you modeled your playing after?
The first two off-the-cuff bands were obvious for me were Hot Rise and The Seldom Scene. Those are two like my big favorites. Live at the Cellar Door is probably one of the greatest, obviously one of the greatest bluegrass albums.
Yeah, I remember you being really into that.
Yeah.
How much of an effect do you think that has? Your band is pretty well known these days for translating like pop and rock songs into your show and kind of bluegrassifying.
That a lot of that has to do with that Seldom Scene album. We really liked the playfulness of what they were doing compared to like, we love Hot Rise too. Like that was one of the other things. We used to do a lot of like Hot Rise songs, but I really liked that album in particular. I really loved the playfulness of Live at the Cellar Door. For me, that was like one of my favorite first bluegrass albums.
Yeah, it's a very good one.
Besides like Foggy Mountain Jamboree. That's one of my other like super favorite ones.
That's classic.
Yeah,
but I just remember they were also known for adapting rock tunes, and that was probably pretty. I don't know if I'd say controversial, but sort of off the beaten path at the time.
Yeah, John Duffy was doing really weird mandolin stuff,
right.
And John Starling would like his vocals were amazing.
Yeah,
I was like, we had really good songs. And Ben Eldridge, his band will play. I was like, cause he was like this cool mix of like old and new. He would play a lot of like the old kind of licks, but he also like a Colonel White loud like. He would like do like that like melodic kind of stuff though too.
Right.
But then he would. He would do like that kind of stuff. He had that cool mix of like both, that great not all
era,
Bill Keith, but not all Earl Scruggs. He had this like cool mix. Yeah.
Then of course Aldridge, one of the best Dobroists. Of all time. So another guy,
and Tom Gray, the awesome bass playing of Tom Gray.
Of course, right? Yeah, let's not forget him. So you play with a Dobro player, Anders Beck, the Dobroist in your band. I've played quite a bit with Dobro players. How do you approach that? Because I've found that sometimes it can actually be kind of tricky to have two separate instruments that are both three-finger picked instruments.
Three-finger picked
plucked.
Instruments.
I wanted to say pluck, and then I switched to
pick. Oh, man.
So do you guys ever have conversations about how you're approaching either backup to different instruments or...
yeah.
Has that ever been a thing?
There is. This directly leads to my musical technique segue of how to back up a 15-minute long dobro solo. Okay, so there's this thing where when Anders is taking a solo, for example,
and this is again Anders Beck, dobro player.
So we have a couple rules of the band. When there's a mandolin solo going on, the dobro always chops because we all feel like a dobro chop with this sounds a lot better than going.
Yeah,
it just doesn't sound to us. It never sounds,
Yep.
That was the first rule, and whenever that's happening, I'm just doing like a basic like roll behind.
Just real simple marking time, solid. Yeah.
Right, I'm just marking time, and he's doing whatever. I'm not trying to embellish. I'm just following marking time basically, and then there's a technique where the third technique is. When Anders is taking a dobro solo and Paul is chopping, he's responsible for the rhythm. Duvall and I can move the music using what I call double stop scale patterns.
Okay.
So if you're playing in G, for example, playing in G right now.
Yeah.
So if you play up the fretboard and double stops.
Yep.
You can move the music, but not full. So you can be like. Sorry.
And so just to narrate what's happening here. So yeah, I think that's called the harmonized major scale, where you're only playing notes that are within the G major scale.
G major scale, but that are in harmony with each other. Yeah, and you can change the way that harmony sounds if you come across like a minor chord. You know, you kind of can change how like the chromatically between the whole thing. I mean,
Right.
but the whole basic principle of it is like diatonic or like harmonic note. And that's how low string. That's the. You know, and that's so it's like there's a lot you can do with that. Like if you're just playing G, and you can play all that, and you can move the. You know, that's kind of like a really easy example of
Right.
So like imagine the bass is going doom 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 boom 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 boom, and, you know, like, and Vol and I are very key to.
Does he try to follow you, or you follow each other?
We kind of instinctively follow each other in like this weird. I know.
Okay.
When we lock up, we usually get into something cool. You know, it's.
And then how do you decide when you're going to do that? Is that when the dobro is kind of picking up steam and you feel like it needs some extra action happening?
It's more just the way that we play. It's the way that we like to push and pull music. You know, it has to do like when's it time for me to do more? When's it time for me? Because a lot of times it's going.
So you're actually more likely to do something like that when we're still talking about under the 15-minute dobro.
15-minute dobro solo, yeah, and it's all about the way you phrase the what's the word I'm looking for? The way that you when you can do a C here, you gotta do a C here. It's called
an inversion.
An inversion of it.
Yes.
Yeah. So like it's like it all depends on how you want to do the inversion too. Because you can go. You know, and like even like that, and that moves the music in a cool way too. Where I'm just playing a bunch of C's, or like what I like to refer to as the Danny Barnes trick, where like playing a bunch of G's.
It's just all G. Yeah. Yeah, hard to go wrong with that.
Even that sounds cool, right? That's like a bunch of G's.
Right. Yeah, it's a cool trick to have, and then to experiment with what places it tends to work for.
To use them, yeah, and not overuse them. That's the other part too. You can't overuse them in a show. Like you can't use them in every song, obviously. So
yeah,
you have to decide when the time for
Pick your
that happens. Yeah,
right. So how about? Did you have more to say about the 15-minute dobro solo? Or is that mostly it? You tend to add the color.
That's like a lot of times I use that technique a lot because you can just go. I mean, but that gets boring after.
Sure.
So you go.
So the key is, for you listeners, look up the Harmonized major scale, or maybe I can do another podcast just about that. But a lot of what Mike is doing, he's adding embellishments, but at the root of it is this progression of diatonic chords.
Those two.
There's so many uses for that too. Yeah,
and then you can get then you can do it in the D scale, you know. It's like there's all the fretboards, like that's just in the G scale. Then there's the same thing in the C scale. Then there's one in the A scale and in the D scale. You know, they're all F scale.
Yeah, and it's the same pattern as long as you start in the right place. So that's the dobro backup trick.
That's the dobro backup trick. Any dobro or mandolin, a mandolin solo too. Guitar, I generally try to lay down the most competent rhythm I possibly can.
Okay,
and then that's when honors will take over the embellishments because over top this go. Like that kind of like we've always found like that's the most powerful thing because like when you take out the rhythm there has to be rhythm coming from somewhere.
Sure.
And that's a really easy way to keep the rhythm going. It's not do a lot. Just do nothing and just roll the basic chord forms.
Yeah, hear your band almost as a big drum set. Someone needs to be the snare. Yeah, someone needs to be the kick. Someone needs to be the hi-hat.
Exactly.
Someone needs to do the fills every once in a while.
Yep.
So something we may not have touched on yet is the reason you're in a situation of backing up 15-minute dobro solos. Tell people what it's like to be at a Greensky Bluegrass show. And spoiler alert, it's not the same as going to see a Blue Highway show or a Ricky Skaggs show. And those are great bands. So yeah, what are Greensky Bluegrass shows like for the uninitiated?
They're fun. They're a mix of like a lot of genres of music, and no show is the same. You're never going to get the same songs. We have really awesome fans. It's real family orientated, but also really fun. People are always really surprised that we're a bluegrass band. Or whatever we do. We do our thing, man. And like that's what the dobro backup trick. Like that's exactly like, where's all this rhythm coming from? That's a perfect example where like even though I'm playing chords and stuff, like I'm definitely playing very rhythmically over. That's the other part of it too. It's like you can do all that diatonic stuff, but it also has to be in time too. It has to make sense.
Yeah, that really goes for anything that we might talk about.
Yes.
Above all else, play it in time.
Don't rush.
And that's at least, yeah.
And unless you rush, then don't rush.
So yeah, how I would describe it is much closer to like a Fish concert.
We have a light show.
There's a light show. It's
really loud. There's affected acoustic instruments, and as half the time you don't know what sound is coming from where. But through all that, the banjo remains constant and clean and clear and acoustic.
I was going to ask you about that because for all the effects that your bandmates might use, I feel like you are most rarely heard using that. Why is that?
Over the years, this developed into this thing where I've realized that a lot of what I do is more like playing piano. And it doesn't matter, no matter how many effects you have in the band, to have an acoustic piano in the band is definitely doesn't matter. You know what I mean? To have that, to have that root. I think that's part of the thing. To have that, there's always the acoustic root in our band is the banjo. And because directly from what I just demonstrated with the Anders backup trick, it's like piano like, almost in a way where like I'm like rolling through chords and but it's always acoustic and pleasant.
Yeah, you keep on stressing.
And banjos just don't sound good with effects. Like it's like weird to get an affected banjo to you have to like play like actually an electric banjo almost to be able to and go with like MIDI. Like that stuff's cool as hell. Yeah. But you have to actually like. I always like the having. I don't know. It's just always been my shtick. I don't know. I wear a white T-shirt and I play acoustic banjo.
Keeping it real.
Electrified.
So even though you are keeping it au naturel, how did the band develop into that? How did you go from playing "Will the Circle Be Unbroken" at open mics and all that to having stomp boxes and synthesized vocals? I remember you guys starting to use acoustic amps on stage, and that was kind of a step. And then after you start doing that, maybe Dave tries to have a distortion box or a reverb box or a delay box. And then it seems like it has just slowly gone from there. Is that how it worked?
That's exactly how it evolved. It was just like one guy got a pedal, and then the other guy had to get a pedal, and then I have to have another pedal because you have one. I have one more than you now. And,
right, and my pedal's bigger.
And my pedal does all this. Well, check this sound out and make. Yeah. My pedal is this. My pedal is and it's like like whatever. And through all that, like I felt like I'm like I'm good, dude. Like this banjo's hard enough as it is,
I don't need to learn how to do things with my feet.
I just want to be able to pick rhythmically and not play out of time, man. That's hard enough. Especially when we push and pull time a lot. It's really, to be able to stay in that pocket is really, or to be accepting of it.
Someone needs to be the reference point.
Yeah.
But was that ever a discussion or a decision? Did you guys have to sit down and say, hey, look, if we keep doing this, we're never going to get hired for the
No, it's never been
Yada Yada Bluegrass
It's never
Festival.
been like that. Like, we've always felt like, you know what? If you want us to play behind one microphone, we'll kick everybody's butt still, because we are an awesome acoustic bluegrass band. We work a microphone like nobody's business. But that was a different band for us. You know, like, if you didn't know us since the very beginning, we actually were a one mic acoustic bluegrass band for when we first our inception was through that. You know, like that's how we won the Telluride Band Contest, is because we worked the mic. We were about 4 inches closer to the microphone than any other band in that contest, and that's the secret right there. Why? Because we were louder than any other band in the contest. Well, the song selection too. Like, it has to be right. Like, you know, obviously for us, it was right, because see where we've come since then. And it's not like that for everybody. You know,
was that the pivotal moment for you guys? Did you feel like that was the biggest difference in terms of going from a band that was just kind of working the bars to a band that was now being taken seriously? It was getting good bookings.
It was definitely from the validation, like the fact that we won this, and it was like, okay, so we actually are pretty good. All right, we are doing something. Okay.
Gave you some confidence.
Gave us some confidence.
That's great.
Like we were doing something. Yeah.
And that's where we're going to press pause on the conversation with Mike Bont. That was only the first half. There's plenty more banjo talk to come. Check back shortly for the second half of that conversation. And in the meantime, feel free to email the show at pickyfingersbanjopodcast@gmail.com with any comments or questions or suggestions. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.